Turkey has controlled the Dardanelles since she captured Constantinople and overran Europe 400 years ago. But Turkey is a sick man. If we apply pressure, she would give way. However, the problem is complicated by Austria and Germany. Both have vital interests in the Balkans. The Austrians to keep open the mouth of the Danube, the Germans to complete the building of their railway from Berlin to Baghdad. The problem facing Russia, therefore, is both simple and complicated. Simple, because the Dardanelles is the only passage through which the Russian fleet can pass from the Black Sea into the Mediterranean. Full stop, paragraph. Any threat by us to the Dardanelles will be viewed by Austria and Germany as a threat to their interests in the Balkans. I believe the conditions for the solution of this problem are now at hand. And they involve the insignificant little territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Yes?
His Majesty would like you to join him and Prime Minister Stolypin on the sun deck.
I'm coming. Signed, the Foreign Minister of His Imperial Majesty Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, Alexander Izvolsky. Mark it very confidential.
Yes, my lord.
There you are. This ship is most confusing. Do you think this is the right dress for tomorrow when King Edward arrives?
I think it's charming.
It's not too low?
For King Edward.
Very well, then. I shall wear it. I prefer it to the new one I bought.
You look beautiful in anything, my poppy. Come, I'll walk you to our cabin.
I hope it will not be foggy tomorrow. Is my uncle going to ask a lot of questions about the way we treat our Jews in Russia?
You may mention it.
Well, I'm not prepared to talk about it.
Oh, we can talk about it, sir.
This is the kind of thing that's going to be the result of signing a treaty with Britain. Well, all I can say...
There's Papa! Is that Remarque?
The Empress has said all along it was a mistake.
But advantages will flow from it. We must give it a chance.
Oh, she has very sound intuitions. Not government, perhaps, but she knows the treaty is not popular with the masses. She's very close to them.
Your ministers are not exactly strangers to them.
No, of course, but she's a woman. That makes a difference. I sometimes think she hears their every heartbeat.
There's another consideration. The Dardanelles. The treaty might help to get them opened.
Do you think the British are going to change their minds now?
I'm working on it.
The Turks will never yield our fleet the right to pass through the Dardanelles. And the British will support them.
The British are realists. If they have to choose between Turkey and us, they know how to change their minds.
Forget the Dardanelles. It's a mare's nest.
Forget the Dardanelles? He consigns 3 centuries of our foreign policy into the ash can with a phrase.
The Empress wishes to remind you, sire, that it's time for tea.
Well, I see no advantage in a treaty if all we get out of it are a lot of questions about the way we treat our Jews.
Don't get him all worked up.
Worked up? Worked up about what?
Opening the Dardanelles. It's his dream. It's also a powder keg. I don't want it in my house.
Perhaps you'd like me to close down the Foreign Office altogether?
I would ask you to appreciate one thing. We can afford no adventures. The war with Japan ruined us. The revolution that followed destroyed people's faith in the government. Make no mistake, we are in an appalling condition. Far worse than he thinks. I was appointed to put this country back on its feet. It'll be a long job, but it can be done with tax reform, land reform, reform in the army and the navy, and with Parliament, if he doesn't keep closing them down. But until then, no adventures. Adventures need muscle, and we have none.
They don't always need muscle. Sometimes just a little diplomacy.
For what you have in mind, they need muscle. Unless you know something that I don't know. Russia is in no position to play the fool, Alexander Petrovich.
The fool?
The fool. A fool is a man with bells on his tunic. You can hear him coming a mile off. And when he arrives, he has nothing in his hand to beat you with but a balloon.
I was sure it was going to be foggy. I kept saying to Alex, I shall be so miserable if the sun doesn't shine for Uncle Bertie.
Well, you see, the good Lord blesses our enterprise. Oh, you must talk to Harding about that. Have you spoken to him?
Not yet. Not yet. Would Your Majesty care for a stroll?
Oh, well.
Your Majesty has his ear to so many doors. I thought...
Oh, I don't always get it right, you know. And I can't speak for the cabinet.
Well, then, what is Your Majesty's view? I mean, if you were us. If England were Russia.
Oh, we'd want the Dardanelles open to our navy. I think that's only natural.
Ah.
I think it must come. But when? And we'd have to look at Turkey in a new light. After all, we've propped her up for years to keep the Russians out of the Mediterranean.
Times have changed. You know how hard I've worked for this treaty between us.
I know my nephew doesn't want it.
He inclines towards the Kaiser and Franz Joseph. It's a more conservative grouping. Suits his nature more. But if we could pull off something with British support, he might begin to see the benefit.
You'll have trouble with Austria.
Not necessarily.
Oh, you've been having talks, have you, with Aehrenthal?
He wants to do something positive. What do you think of him?
He always has to be proving himself, you know. That worries me.
Ah, it's the Jew in him.
Oh, is he a Jew?
Oh, way back somewhere he got splashed.
No, I don't think it's that. It's more that he's an amateur. Amateurs have fancy ideas. And fancy ideas frighten British politicians.
Oh, they prefer them plain, like their food. Well, I agree Aehrenthal is a bit fancy. He gets an idea and flings himself into it.
And you?
I think it may be time for a little old world diplomacy. Stolypin knows I have something in mind, but he doesn't know what. He knows it's to do with opening the Dardanelles, but can't conceive a situation in which the Austrians would agree to it. But then, my dear Aehrenthal, you and I can.
But he's not against it, Mr. Stolypin.
How could a Russian be against the opening of the Dardanelles? But he's frightened of it. He thinks neither the British nor the French would back us.
Did you sound the British out when you met at Rehearsal?
I had talks with King Edward. He was sympathetic.
But he doesn't speak for the cabinet.
No, but he's close, and I spoke to Harding, who was there.
Oh, what was his reaction?
Cautious, but not dismissive.
Did you mention Bosnia and Herzegovina?
What do you take me for? If you want Bosnia, you must do your own talking.
Maybe better to do none at all.
Not even to the Germans.
Oh, the Germans. There's been too much talking to the Germans. We don't need their support.
But what if they oppose?
They won't oppose.
If you annex Bosnia?
We already occupy it. We've occupied it for 30 years. If we annex it, it will simply recognize a fact which already exists.
But it still belongs to Turkey. And the Kaiser's very friendly with the Turks. If you offend the Turks, won't you also offend him?
My dear Izvolsky, one may foresee every eventuality, but one cannot guard against every eventuality. Some we must leave to the gods. No, I'm not worried about the Germans. The point is, would we have your support if we decided to incorporate Bosnia and Herzegovina into the Austrian Empire?
You mean mine personally?
Russia's, then. You see, my object is to bring our two countries closer together, not drive them further apart.
Well, let me put a question to you. How sure are you that your government won't oppose the opening of the Dardanelles to our Black Sea fleet?
Fairly sure. They would have to see they were getting something for their money.
Of course.
It's important to us that Bosnia become an integral part of the Austrian Empire. She could then be economically integrated with the rest of it and prosper. What view would your government take, do you think?
Oh, well, they wouldn't cheer, you understand. Traditionally, you have always increased your influence in the Balkans at the expense of ours. But if it were engineered right, I mean in such a way that in the event some good could be seen to flow from it for us?
Hmm. And what of France?
I can only guess.
All foreign policy is a matter of guesswork.
But the object of diplomacy is to take the guesswork out. I need a little time.
Well, we've got time. We're exploring only, we're not committed.
There's a certain commitment already. We've exchanged letters, memoranda, albeit confidential.
We can always draw back. We are merely seeking ways of further cooperation.
King Edward will be here next month on his way to Marienbad. Will you broach the subject?
I leave that to my emperor.
Ah, but what will you tell your emperor?
To leave it to me.
Oh, so between you, you'll say very little.
Nothing at all.
I think you're wise. Goodbye, Baron.
Goodbye.
I can find my way out.
Steed! Steed! What are you doing in Marienbad?
Oh, taking the water, sir. Like you.
Well, I hope they're doing you more good than they do me, then. You know Monsieur Clemenceau? Baron Izvolsky?
Gentlemen.
Wickham Steed, Times correspondent in Vienna. He's got more rumors than a girl's dormitory. I get all my rumors from Steed. The cabinet never understands why I'm so well informed. Well, what have you got for us today, then?
I warn you, Mr. Steed, my appetite is not to be trifled with. You can spoil my lunch with a fact, but not with a rumor.
Oh, facts are just Steed's rumors with hindsight.
I've got nothing worth spoiling your lunch for today, sir.
Good.
You disappoint me, Steed. Here are these two brilliant foreign ministers of France and Russia who think they know everything. Can't we shake them up even a little bit?
I'm out of my class here, sir.
Oh, I can't accept that. You put the Times' reputation at stake.
Are you a gambling man, Mr. Steed? Here's 20 kroner, says you can't tell us anything we haven't heard already. That'll buy you a very good lunch.
Oh, but it's too easy. Mr. Steed could just pluck a rumor straight out of the air.
He's too much the professional.
Well, then we could say that we've heard it.
You may, but I wouldn't.
Well, Steed, I tell you what, I'll put up Steed's stake money.
No. Steed or nothing. Besides, you promised the British press, as I remember, that you wouldn't gamble anymore. Well, you've nothing to tell us, Steed. Can't manage even a small one.
Well, if it's only a small one, what about this? The Austrian Emperor is contemplating the annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thanks for the lunch. So, gentlemen.
Think there's any truth in it?
No, I can't believe it. I've just had talks with the Emperor of Austria. He would have mentioned it.
Have you heard it, Baron?
Of course not. But it might be true. It's clear they'll try it one day.
I can't believe it. It would upset the peace of Europe.
Why?
Because the Serbs would never accept it. And if they wouldn't, would Russia?
It would depend on how it was done, I suppose. Part of a general settlement? A settlement might do for us what the mortar does for the bricks. Not only keeps them together, it also keeps them apart.
Damn your Wickham Steed. Spoiled my lunch after all.
I am convinced that the new Turkish government plans to give a measure of independence to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and that they have already summoned Bosnian representatives to Constantinople to open discussions. You may feel that this has some bearing upon the date when you intend to make your next move.
Does it?
It amounts to this, Your Majesty. If our ambassador in Constantinople is correct, and I think he is, then unless we announce the annexation soon, we shan't be able to announce it at all without seeming to put the clock back.
It will upset the Kaiser.
Well, we must at least be sure of Russian support.
Do you think that Britain and France will agree to the opening of the Dardanelles?
That's Izvolsky's problem, not ours.
we've agreed to support him.
Oh, we shall support him. If it ever comes to a conference.
I see. You think it won't?
I think it might not.
But then Russia will have given away something for nothing.
Oh, they'll still have our support for their half of the bargain. But of course, the opening of the Dardanelles doesn't depend on us alone. Britain and France must agree.
So Izvolsky's position hinges on his belief that they will agree?
Of course.
Is it yours?
No. But it's for Izvolsky to make his assessments and for me to make mine.
Well, I think we should have it clear. I think that you should see him again before we move.
He's at Carlsbad, I believe, with his wife. I'll telephone him and ask for a meeting.
It was from Aehrenthal. He wants me to meet him.
Oh, Sasha, where?
At Bucklau Castle. It's not far. He's coming from Vienna himself.
You said no business on this trip.
Something has come up. I'll be back in a day or so.
Couldn't it have waited till I went home?
He seemed anxious to meet. I think I know why.
Oh, that man. I don't like him.
You mean he didn't fall head over heels in love with you when you met?
His opinion of me is of no interest. I could have charmed him if I'd wanted to. I just didn't want to try. Besides, he's Jewish, and I don't like them.
A Jewish grandfather, that's all.
It's the same thing.
Nothing of the kind. A drop of Jewish blood can add spice to the mixture. Like the drop of Georgian in you. I must go and pack.
More brandy?
Thank you.
Let's sit by the fire.
Ah. Well, if the situation is as pressing as you think...
What's this?
A summary of what we talked about this afternoon and agreed. Just a few headings on a piece of paper.
I see. You were busy before dinner. You want it all in writing?
Don't you?
Well, I hadn't thought. Of course, such a document could never be made public.
Of course not.
Then why bother to write it down?
Because, my dear Baron, my government will say to me that Baron Aehrenthal may have washed his hands of the whole thing as soon as he left the room. And vice versa, your government will say the same to you.
But if the document could never be made public, what force could it lend to our agreement?
It convinces our respective masters that you and I have reached an understanding. Without it, they won't even know that. It states simply that at any conference called to discuss a crisis in the Balkans, Russia will support your demand for the annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Austria will support our demand for the opening of the Dardanelles.
It says nothing about Serbia.
Well, I can't speak for the Serbs.
No, of course. But Serbia has a special interest in Bosnia and Herzegovina. They're the same people. Slavs. Serbia expects to inherit Bosnia when the Turkish Empire collapses.
Well, then she will be disappointed.
You think then there will be no Russian support for Serbia?
We won't stand by and see them beaten to their knees.
Oh, won't come to that. No. It's another problem altogether. Serbia may insist on compensation. I'd like your assurance that you won't support them.
In writing.
Well, since we're putting things in writing, I think it's best that we both know from the beginning not only what to expect from each other, but also what not to expect.
But surely you know it might give us room for maneuver. Some compensation for Serbia agreed between us, mentioned at the right time, could bring the pot off the boil.
We may consider compensation to Turkey, but never to Serbia. She has no rightful claim.
But she has, as you say, expectations.
She may expect the moon for all I care. She won't get it. Let me put it this way. If the Russian government should decide to support a Serbian claim for compensation, one of three things would happen. Either we should be forced to pay, which would humiliate us, or Russia would be forced to back down, which would humiliate her, or there would be war. Isn't it our duty, as statesmen, to prevent our governments from finding themselves in that position?
Very well, if you insist. Write it in. No compensation. When do you envisage the announcement of the annexation? I shall need some time to prepare the ground for a conference.
Oh, in about a month, I suppose. One should make appropriate noises.
Ah. Well, at least I can return to Carlsbad and finish off my little cure. My wife, at least, will be pleased. Then I must see Clemenceau in Paris and Gray in London to get their support for a conference.
Anything that affects the balance in the Mediterranean worries France.
But Russia and France are treaty powers now. This attitude is years out of date.
Public opinion is years out of date, but what can you do? Governments can't run too far ahead. They can strain at the leash, but they can't jerk it free and run off.
Are you saying bluntly that we get no support from France for opening up the Dardanelles to our fleet?
Baron, all this was settled by the Treaty of Berlin 30 years ago. You are asking for a revision of that treaty? I cannot see you getting it.
Because of the other signatory powers, or because of France?
Have you considered the effect on Austria if we agree to a Russian demand for revision of the treaty?
Austria won't make trouble.
Well, that's not my reading of the situation.
Well, but it's mine. Aehrental's not one of the old school. He recognizes that we have a case.
Have you had talks with Aehrental?
We've spoken about it.
What does that mean?
Well, it means what it says. We've discussed it.
Have you reached some kind of agreement?
Well, of course not. What do you take me for?
Because if you had, and it was on the basis of our agreement to the opening of the Dardanelles, I should have advised you to withdraw from such an agreement with the utmost speed. But that clearly is unnecessary.
You'd give no support, then, to a conference on the Balkans?
Why? Is there a crisis? Yes. Yes, Monsieur le Président. I have him with me now. I see. Yes, I'll tell him. I'll be over in half an hour. Incredible. What do you carry on your watch chain, a crystal ball? That was President Valliere. The Austrian ambassador has just presented him with a letter from the Emperor Franz Joseph. It announces the annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and implies that Russia will concur.
But that's impossible.
Is it? Didn't you say in Marienbad you thought it likely and that you might support it?
Well, there'll have to be a conference now.
For what?
Well, to discuss the crisis. What else?
My dear Baron, don't you understand? The announcement is not a declaration of intent. The annexation has taken place. Bosnia and Herzegovina have been incorporated into the Austrian Empire. You're faced with an accomplished fact, not a bargaining position.
That Jew! That awful Jew! He promised me 4 weeks before he would move. Can you ever do business with these people?
Monsieur Izvolsky, I think it less a matter of his religion than his temperament. Aehrental's either been hasty or he's misunderstood the nature of your talks.
Misunderstood? There's nothing that trickster misunderstands except the nature of honor. He's put me in an unspeakable position. He's thrown a bomb at my feet and run off down the street.
Did you agree nothing at all at Buchlau Castle?
My dear Gray, there was no hard agreement. I told you, would I make an agreement with Aehrenthal on the subject of the Balkans without first consulting Britain and France?
That you discussed Bosnia?
Well, of course, we discussed Bosnia. How could one not discuss Bosnia-Herzegovina?
You didn't agree to recognize the annexation?
Not even the barest possibility of an annexation. Except as part of some general settlement at some indefinite future date. Are you telling me that foreign ministers cannot have talks about talks?
Well, what are you suggesting? A conference?
Yes, a conference.
Haul Austria up before a court of nations to answer for her actions?
To discuss her violations of her treaty obligations. Do you think my government will just tamely accept the situation? Oh, without a conference, I'm sunk. Russia is sunk. And so, if I may mention it, is our triple entente.
Well, I shall talk to the cabinet.
You must make them see our point of view, or I cannot answer for the consequences.
The Germans must be behind this. I don't believe the Austrians would move without them.
My dear Gray, you don't know Aehrenthal. He's looking for independence from Germany. It's pathetic.
Then you must see the Kaiser on your way back to St. Petersburg. Get him to apply pressure in Vienna. After all, it's his protege, Turkey, who's been injured.
You're right. I'll drop off at Berlin on my way back to St. Petersburg.
It is intolerable. Intolerable. Are we to meet this appeal from the Serbs? Can we meet it? Are we in a position to meet it? Of course we are not. Your foreign minister has brought us to the brink of war with his grand-style diplomacy.
Do you think there was an agreement?
They agreed something. What it is, we're not in a position to say, since your foreign minister chooses not to confide in us.
You must write to the Kaiser, my love. Ask him to intercede in Vienna. It is the only way at times like this. Monarch must speak to monarch. It is so much easier.
Yes. Yes, I'll write to him. What do you think?
You may write to him, though I doubt it will do us much good.
I think that it will. I am sure he disapproves of this Austrian adventure.
He may, but his ministers won't.
That will not be material. The Kaiser is the strongest voice in Germany.
He is not the strongest voice in Germany, he is only the loudest.
I do not think it right, Peter Arkadievich, to refer to the Emperor's cousin in that manner.
I speak what I feel, Your Imperial Majesty. This is not a time to mince words. We might, within the next days, be at war with the Emperor's cousin.
Well, let's not quarrel. Now, how do we answer this appeal for support from the Serbs?
At this stage, we must let it be seen we support them. Empty gesture as it may turn out to be.
I told you, my love. This alliance with Britain will do us no good.
Oh, I don't know. It seems
the Austrians would never dare behave like this. If you were great friends with the Kaiser.
But how does one become great friends with the Kaiser?
I don't understand it, that's all. Not only do I not understand it, I don't agree with it.
If Your Majesty tried to understand it, you might find yourself able to agree with it.
I'll tell you what I do understand, Prince von Bülow. For 20 years, at the request of my ministers, I have paid court to the Sultan of Turkey. I've flattered him. I've made speeches to him. I've listened to his horrible jokes in his horrible German. Now you tell me he's no longer important.
He is less important.
Because the Austrian alliance has suddenly become more important?
If Austria makes war on Serbia, Russia will come to the aid of the Serbs.
They'll be like two old ladies shaking their umbrellas at each other.
Russia is not prepared for war. The French will have to come to her aid. In that event, it seems to be vital that we should have no doubt in London or Paris as to where we stand. I find it very difficult to conduct this conversation while Your Majesty is so absorbed in slaughtering chickens.
You've had your holiday.
I cut it short to return here because of the crisis.
Then it's a pity you didn't cut it short earlier. I might then have had the benefit of your advice when Izvolsky was here. As it is, I had to tell him we'd do what we could to calm things down in Vienna.
We'll do what we feel is necessary.
If you want my frank opinion, I think Aehrenthal behaved like a damned fool.
I agree. You should have consulted us. But the situation has gone too far for recriminations. We shall have to support him up to the hilt.
That may mean war?
We're ready for it if it comes. Our talks with the Austrian High Command are well advanced.
And what about England?
Well, we can't be sure what England will do, but it's of no consequence. Their army would have no impact on the continent of Europe.
That's true. They couldn't even win the Boer War properly. Do you know, I told Uncle Bertie how to conduct that campaign, and he just laughed.
It's understood, then, that we give our full support to Austria?
Well, if we must support them, we must. Whatever we do, Germany will get the blame. Everybody always blames Germany, which of course means me. Blame the Kaiser. That's the game everybody knows.
Mr. Speaker, I have to report to this House that a very grave situation now exists in the Balkans as a result of the Austrian annexation of the Turkish provinces of Bosnia and Herzegovina, about which we were not informed. The Austrian and Serbian armies now confront each other, and the threat of war is very serious indeed. A war which, if it happens, may draw in the major powers of Europe. In an attempt to avert this tragedy, the governments of Britain, France, and Russia have proposed a European conference to try to settle the issue.
You bought a bargain, but you got tricked into leaving it behind.
Bargain? Everyone keeps talking about bargains. Am I running a carpet shop in the souks?
You've behaved as if you were.
There was a discussion. There was no bargain.
A discussion you failed to inform your own government about.
Because I was not ready. Can't you understand? Aehrenthal pulled the mat out from under my feet. How can you conduct foreign policy in this way? Are these to be the new diplomatic ethics of the 20th century? Can't one discuss possibilities without being accused of making bargains? We were looking for a new era in cooperation between Russia and Austria. That was the basis for the talks.
That was the basis. But you forgot to mention the price. The incorporation of Bosnia and Herzegovina into the Austrian Empire.
Well, in exchange for their support over the Dardanelles.
Oh, damn your Dardanelles. You sold out the Serbs.
Who cares about the Serbs?
We do! Russia does! And if you'd read a Russian newspaper occasionally, you would know that.
Are you joking? Oh, well, of course we care about the Serbs. But...
Times change, Alexander Petrovich. We're no longer interested in the Dardanelles.
I've heard that said before, Your Majesty, but I don't believe it.
It's not a vital issue anymore.
Oh, then it should be.
What use is the right to pass our fleet through the Dardanelles when we do not have a fleet? Our fleet is at the bottom of the Pacific, sunk by the Japanese.
But we have the Black Sea Fleet, and we have a naval building program.
It is not an issue worth betraying the Serbs for, and even if you get your conference, you will not get the Dardanelles open.
Oh, why not?
Because the British will only agree if they are open to the warships of all nations. Do you imagine, Baron, that Russia will ever agree to that? I had the British ambassador here this morning. That is the view of the British cabinet.
We could mobilize. Why throw everything away so quickly? Your Majesty has written to the Kaiser. I've seen him. He's promised to intercede. Give it a chance to work. If we'll rattle enough sabers, we'll get a conference and find a formula. That I can promise you.
All right. Do what you can. Rattle as many sabers as you like, Baron, but draw none. Or even you will see they're all broken off at the hilt.
His Excellency, the German ambassador.
Show him in. What's this? An ultimatum?
We don't regard it as such.
It's an ultimatum. Twist it whichever way you like. First, you ask us whether we will agree to recognize the annexation, and then you say that if we refuse, you will leave events to take their course.
That's as far as we feel able to go.
You mean you will allow the Austrians to make war on Serbia?
Austria does not seek war.
Well, then she's blundering into it. Like an idiot. The Serbs have a right to compensation, and you know it.
The German government cannot accept that position and hopes that Russia will not defend it.
Will not defend it? If Austria declares war on Serbia, she will have us to contend with, and that's final. And then what will you have? A European war? Is that what Germany wants?
It won't be of our making.
Is this some new German insanity? To give unlimited credit to that bankrupt regime in Vienna? Who's in charge at the Wilhelmstrasse now? The office cleaners?
I think you'd better listen to me for a moment, Baron, so that I may put the position very clearly. Our government insists that there shall be no misunderstanding. Neither the British nor the French want trouble. They have already agreed privately with Aehrenthal to recognize the annexation before the conference.
Oh, those are tales from the Vienna woods, my friend. Aehrenthal will tell you anything to bring off this little coup without a fight. But even if it were true, The British and the French would have no option but to support us if we go to war.
But you won't. I happen to know that you have already decided that Russia is in no position to fight.
Oh, we shall support the Serbs. And if there's any doubt in Berlin on that score, you may dispel it at once.
You will not support the Serbs. You will withdraw your support and bring pressure on them to recognize the annexation.
Are you threatening us?
No, Baron. I'm threatening you. Unless you do as we ask, we shall see to it that the secret negotiations between you and Aehrenthal are made public.
Negotiations? What negotiations?
Well, there are letters and records of talks. Aehrenthal informs us that he has a document in your own handwriting, stating quite clearly your agreement to recognize the annexation.
Under certain conditions, but those conditions were never fulfilled.
The document doesn't make that clear. What is clear to us in Berlin is that you agreed to give away British and French interests without consulting them.
Aehrenthal, do you know what he has done to diplomacy? Do you think anyone will ever trust anyone anymore?
What is certain, Baron, is that no one will ever trust you anymore.
Well, I'll take that risk. I think I can explain myself to Britain and France.
And can you explain yourself to the Serbs? Can you explain to them how you bartered away their rights to compensation in a secret deal and for your own advantage? And even worse, can you explain it to your own government, who are blithely demanding compensation at this moment, totally unaware that they have already sacrificed Serbia's right to it? You will do as you are told. Otherwise, every letter, every document will be made available to the capitals of Europe, and you will be seen for what you are. A cynical, unprincipled gambler who has no more regard for his friends than he has for his enemies. You may as well take a pistol and blow your brains out, because there's not a government in Europe that would give you house room. You will accept the annexation or take the consequences. Germany insists. Germany will not stand by and see her old ally, Austria, humiliated. That is our decision. That is our final word.
Dear God, the lunatics have taken over the asylum.
So the Russians have abandoned the Serbs after all?
Yes, sir. Without informing us, the French, or anybody. Oh, no thank you, sir.
How do you explain it?
Well, I don't know. We suspect Izvolsky compromised himself in Vienna in some way and was terrified it would get out.
So after all the fuss, what has Aehrenthal achieved? A paltry change in the legal status of some obscure Balkan provinces, and Russia will never forget that she was forced to betray the Serbs.
I'm afraid I've spoiled your breakfast, sir. I thought the news might cheer you up.
What depresses me, Gray, is our pathetic belief that we all know where we're going.
In some measure, we do, sir.
Do we? Austria sets out to be independent of Germany and ends up by being tied more firmly to her coattails than ever before. Russia looks for some slight prestige after her humiliation by Japan and ends up by being humiliated all over again. Germany starts off by supporting Turkey at the expense of Austria and ends up by supporting Austria at the expense of Turkey. Does it make sense? It seems to me the more surely we set our course northeast, the more surely we end up by going southwest.
I don't think we're as helpless as all that, sir.
I tell you, Gray, I'm tired. For years, I've traipsed all over Europe for you politicians. And I tell you, I don't think it makes a damn bit of difference what we do.
You take too gloomy a view, sir. After all, if Germany and Austria are closer together now, we are much closer to Russia and France than anyone would have thought possible 5 years ago. That's a comfort.
Is it? Haven't you just drawn the future battle lines of Europe?
Oh, I hope not, sir.